Welcome to another episode of Advancing Consciousness series. My name is Franco De Nicola, and this evening, this afternoon, whatever time it is for you, we have another episode. This is episode 15, I think it is, right? 16, sorry, episode 16. And we're going to be talking about discernment and giving your power away. And more than ever, with everything that's been going on, this is a very hot topic because many of us are giving ourselves away in the sense of going with whatever is being presented to us. So it became very much in light that we needed to look at this whole idea of discernment and giving our power away. Because a lot of times people say, well, we need to get our power back and whatever else. What does that even mean, giving our power back? Did we give it away? Well, we're going to look at that. And we're going to look at what discernment is all about too. So as we go through this journey together, we're going to find that in our life, we've always were in the driver's seat without realizing that. Now, as a young person, as a child, you kind of knew that you had the navigation of your life. You just went with whatever felt right with you. However, we had such loving parents, loving people that took on different roles in our lives and kept telling us, no, that's not how life works, and we have to work this way, we got to do that way. And then we started to get, programmed from the family dynamics, then programmed from our peers and our environment around us. Then we started to get programmed from the educational system, media, and you name it. And then all of a sudden, what we came in as a very natural way to play the game of life was no longer the same as it was, because now we adopted these ideas. So right now, as you know, we're going through a lot of changes, and this will continue. Carry on. So with everything that's going on right now, we have a lot of input, of information coming in every day. Not only from the mainstream media, from social media, from other people around us, and people are sharing their own experiences and so forth. So we are inundated with information. And then we have this other information within us, which we call discernment. It's our own inner knowing that comes into play. So what happens is that we end up getting confused and we kind of go where the loudest information is coming from. Now, given ourselves not to connect with ourselves and we kind of go by the mind's a very powerful computer, and it does receive a lot of information when it comes to what your body is sharing, what your human entity is sharing, what your soul is sharing, what it's connected to other resources is sharing. But it's also got this operating system we call the ego, which is that artificial intelligence. And it loves to create story upon story upon story about anything and everything. So it is also very powerful in creating what we call fear, which ends up being a very strong emotional program within ourselves that we experience very intensely, that have us the tendency to shut down every part of it and give ourselves to what we call, giving our power away, or basically not even acknowledging what we are feeling within ourselves. So when we're talking about discernment, what is discernment? It's actually checking in with yourself, tuning in to see what resonates and what does not resonate, what feels in alignment for you and what does not. Many times we feel that this is something I do not need to take action with, or we may feel that this is something I need to take action with, and then we get other people around us and other groups and other situations saying otherwise. So what happens is, because we hear it several occasions, your ego steps in and says, listen, we have several credible people that you trust that is, telling you that you should go that way. But inside you're doing something else. So given that the persistence of the ego being the story maker and so forth, a lot of times we tend to go with that story, and we are actually taking the course that others are dictating or sharing with us. Now, the beauty of all of that is that's a great experience too, because you feel yourself, well, I'm stepping out of my own inner knowing and I'm going to have that experience and see how that plays out. Now, if you're really paying attention, you'll notice that as you're going along, that dissonance, that misalignment with yourself, and say, well, I'm doing this, but it doesn't really feel 100%, will become louder and louder. You will feel it. Now, you may not hear the stories because the ego is saying, hey, wait a minute, we're on the right track. Everybody's going down this path. We got to do this and so forth. And we got to wear 10 masks or whatever the story is at that time for whatever's playing out. And then what we are doing with that beautiful dance, going down that path, we have our higher self saying, okay, you have your experience what you need to experience. However, we need to remember that this is something that if we're going to go down that path, it's a short visit. It's not something that you're going to lock into, because we're going off path of where we want to go. Because your higher self, every part of you, the body, the human entity, the higher self or soul, wants to really progress. And now we have such a beautiful canvas of massive polarity, massive opportunities for us to see that if I follow these certain paths, that I'm going to get caught up in the whole dance of everything that's going on, which, may be exciting for a short while, but it's saying, no, we are here to experience this, but we're here to transform it. We are here to bring what we have as an offering of a true understanding, a true sourceness. Because basically what we're doing is we're bringing in your higher self, your soul, into your experience much more, rather localizing everything in the mind, which, all of it is streaming. But this can create lots of noise and can create lots of stories that will distract us from that part. So when we're talking about discernment, like I said, you're tuning into yourself. You're looking at it and say, okay, I hear all of this. And you can take it section by section. Okay, the media is saying all of this. How does it feel to me? Now, of course, the mind's going to create, sometimes the ego mind is going to create, fear. We got to listen. And you're going to feel possible emotions of fear or whatever it is. But calm that down. Just say, okay, no, we're going to put that aside. Put it aside. You say, no, we're going to put it aside. I want to feel how it feels within me as a resonance. It's that calmness, that knowingness, that very powerful part of you that is not swayed by whatever's going on around you, because the ego mind will bounce like crazy. The programs will go from one program to another, and it's very unstable. And if you pay attention to it, you'll see it will agree with one story and then agree to another story and so forth. And so if you're getting 10 different resources and each resource is a little different, it goes, they got a point, they got a point, they got a point, and they got a point, and you're kind of going in there, and then you go, I'm confused now. Because at that point, so it's really not about, so say you had 10 inputs. Say you had 10 inputs. You can listen to all of the inputs. You say, okay, I'm going to take all of these inputs that are coming in, and I'm going to see, maybe there's a seed in each and every one. Maybe not one of them is 100%. Let me take a seed of that. But you're going to take each one and then feel it inside, how it feels, if it resonates for you, if it feels in alignment. Okay? So out of the 10, you may create one understanding that you will now look at and say, okay, how does that feel for me to put all these pieces together and to navigate accordingly, to experience that accordingly. So that way you're actually using your own inner discernment of what is. Because there's a lot of information, and at times, because there are certain points, for example, let's take this one. So here you get 1, 2, 3 checkpoints that are going, yeah, that resonates. These 3 points resonate with me. But then there's a dozen other points that come up that really don't resonate. But you're going, now what happens is the ego will say, well, look, they got a point. They got 3 points actually. It must be valid. We must listen to the rest of it. Well, it doesn't work that way, because what you're looking at It's saying, well, let's put it all together and we're going to see because this is credible. And if they got letters behind their name or they, self-proclaimed expert of some sort, does not mean anything. They may be expert in whatever they're playing with and whatever they're projecting. But you're going to look at it and say, okay, those 3 points actually align with me. The other stuff, not so much. In fact, possibly not at all. So you just take those and you toss it out. Okay, not interested in any of these. And you don't bring it in, and just because they got the 3, that the gospel rule. No, you're going to say, okay, those 3 are great. You're going to listen to another one, you may get 1 point out of that one, or something else. But in most cases, that's when you're looking and siphoning through information. So just because an expert may say something, and when they say an expert, it's labeled, self-labeled, or collectively labeled expert, you're going to look at it and say, okay, how does that resonate for me, where I'm at? Because you have to look at that too. Depending on the state that you're in, certain experiences may match, may be required, may be beneficial for a period of time. And certain states, it's like another distraction, another going down the path that really is unnecessary. Yeah, okay, it's a scenic tour. We can gain more scenery from it, but you're going to come to the realization it's like, what am I going down this path for, where it's not really in alignment with yourself? So by using discernment, you're basically, what you're looking at, you just take the points that actually match to stimulate your own knowing. This is the thing. You're stimulating your own knowing. It's what your higher self is saying. These are the points. Now, these points actually match with what I've been saying, or that I've been indicating that you've been ignoring in some way. Okay? So then what it does is stimulates your own knowing, and then you build around that. Many of us, when we're in confusion, if you just quieten the mind, take some time to meditate, and then connect with yourself, the heart, whatever you want to call it, and ask yourself, how does this apply in my journey? Is it beneficial for us to look at these versus this, or is this the direction for us now? And you have to use the word now, because remember, we're living in the moment. Each moment is upgrading. Each moment is changing. Each moment the collective is changing. The world is changing, and so forth. So what may be a beneficial experience for you at one time may no longer be. And this is one of the things I want to talk about when we're resonating, because you could turn around and say, well, I resonate with this, but down the road in your experience, then all of a sudden these things don't resonate anymore. Maybe 1 or 2 don't resonate and the other 2 still resonate. Does it mean that you made an error in, that resonated and I went down that path, but now it doesn't resonate anymore? No, it's not the case. Really what's happening is these items were necessary for you at the time, being here, at the time, to use those points of resonating for you so that you would be able to create the next several minutes, several days, or whatever it is down a certain path. But when you've gotten here, these things are no longer required, or maybe 1 or 2 may not be required. Then you're going to say, okay, what led me to take these steps are no longer in resonance. For example, let me give you an example. So somebody invites you to go do a talk somewhere. That's just an example. And you go there, you get the invitation, and you go, wow, it resonates. I get an opportunity to go talk, right? So you go do the talk, you meet some other people, and then you find out, it doesn't really resonate. Well, the reason you had it resonate at first was for you to break out of your state of saying, I'm never going to go out there and do a talk, or the fact that, I need to be invited or anything like that. Now that you had the invitation, now you've already experienced it, and you go, yeah, it doesn't resonate with what I'm playing with. So now I know I can speak, I know I can share, I know I can do this or that, whatever that may be. And then you take it on yourself. You move forward. So what resonated to go was only necessary to get you on stage, for example, or to in front of a crowd or group or whatever in that particular example. And this happens in any part of our lives. So you resonate to take a certain action, you take that action, then it doesn't resonate anymore, and say, okay, because I've upgraded, I've achieved what I needed for that to resonate. So you have to be kind of open with it coming and going in a sense. Now, from an inner guidance, with everything that's going on at this point, you need to look at all this information, and just, you could take resources in to reinforce what you already feel. Because look at it this way. A lot of us, we connect, we tune in, or we start listening to ourselves, our higher self, and it basically says, yeah, don't worry about this, 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 this. These steps are just for whoever wants to play with that. We're just moving through it. It's not important. We don't have to put power into that or anything of that nature. And guess what? You get that. And then it's like, ego goes, well, how do you know for sure? Come on, that could have been made up or anything of that nature. So it's going to come up with a whole bunch of other stories. So now you start to expose yourself to different inputs to confirm what your higher self said. And this goes back to this. And it's like, okay, oh, yeah, they're talking about three of these things, or several of these, are talking about several of those things that actually I received from my higher self. Okay, that's a confirmation. So at first, you may require confirmations. Confirmation of what you've already heard from yourself or what you've already have achieved in your own knowing. It's not that, oh, I got to make up my mind by the input. No, it's like I need to confirm what I'm already receiving because I still have doubt. And where's the doubt come from? One thing, ego. So the ego is going to create doubt. It's one of its jobs. It's one of its skill sets, because doubt creates confusion. Confusion creates abandonment, and an abandonment of self and going into the ego. Well, I take care of you. I'm going to direct you. I'm going to show you the way of life. You'll be okay. Let me take care of it, type of thing. And that's what it does. But its path is not always for your highest good, in the sense of, okay, we're going to take you down the rosy path or whatever it is in your life. So there are experiences that we don't need to replicate. There's just, experiences that we do not need to continue to expand on. So that's kind of what we're doing. We're just changing the direction. Did you have something you wanted to say?
Savannah, she has saying, I see myself get caught in story of this being done to us, 5G, destroy the economy, to disempower us, etc. Don't want to go down that path, and do send love and still get upset, caught victim. Any suggestions? Shift from empowerment to disempowerment with this?
Yeah, okay. So basically, the only thing that's going to do that for you is your ego mind, okay? Because the ego mind loves to judge, likes to compare, it uses that as a tool to be able to get you off track of that knowing. So the ego mind, like I've talked before, will create the whole idea of victim. The fact that things are happening to you out of control, without your control, without your navigation. Because that's what it's going to say. And I got to protect you. So whenever you're having that coming up, okay, you just take some time quietly. You close your eyes, focus on the breath, and now you just say to your ego mind, I'm not going to give you any power in this. We're not going to play with any of this stuff. And you ask your higher self, okay. So what you're doing is actually redirecting. You're creating a new path of default of redirecting yourself to a higher resource rather than the ego's part of it. Because when we truly understand, you go into discernment, when you go into the true knowing, okay, when you're in knowing, you will know that nothing happens without you participating. And whatever the dance is, collectively or otherwise, your involvement and so forth is really your involvement. It's your choice how far you're going to go into it. So it's really about bringing yourself, recentering yourself to your higher self. And that quietness comes along because you have to really take the ego out of the equation over and over again. So anything that creates confusion, anything that creates stories, anything that just muddles up, your emotional field or whatever it is coming up, it's all from this. So you say, oh, I see where you're coming from. I get you. Thank you for your share. And I love you for your share. But, you're relieved of your responsibility. You're relieved of this whole idea that you need to go down that path. So it's a muscle that you have to exercise, because you have to get, and when I say muscle, I mean an internal muscle, energetic muscle, an attention direction muscle, in the sense of saying, okay, I see where that's coming, I choose to direct here. And you have to keep doing that, and eventually, bit by bit, you won't have that automatic default in that direction. You're going to have a default of that inner knowing. So it doesn't matter what the situation is, you're not being drawn back to, the ego's game, right? So when we look at it, and I know I'm going to talk about it in one of the upcoming episodes about whatever's going on the planet right now, because we have to understand, and I'll give you the base right now, is that whatever is taking place in your life, collectively and otherwise, and it doesn't matter who's the instigator, who are the role players, what was the original intent, or anything of that nature. You could say, well, you can, the ego is going to say blame, but the ego is also part of that whole game. You'd say, well, it's these following people, organizations, and whatever else that they do is why we're in the situation that we're in. So it's going to say all of that along the way, always reinforcing that you're the victim and they're the victimizer, and you got to go hunt the victimizer, and you got to find somebody to blame. That's just the ego's idea. Higher self is saying, hey, we're co-creating this. There's an allowance happening right now so that we become self-empowered. We have an allowance so that we step into our own true essence and navigate from that. So this is why when we're talking about giving our power, look at it this way. The moment we accept other people's ideas, perceptions, collective or otherwise, could be religion, it could be organizations, it could be education, it could be other friends, it could be family, it could be anything. The moment you accept that and say, okay, they said these things, and you say, I agree 100%, you're basically now buying into it, and you're going to have the experience of what that was. Okay? So, when we talk about being your true, genuine self, that means allowing the true you, that means the inner knowing you, the gifted you, the part of you that is the spark of life, to navigate your life, rather than the stories, programs, belief systems that are being imposed amongst each other. We always have the freedom to choose. So if the narrative of the collective is you're a victim and we are in control of your life, as long as you buy into that, you're now into that. And so you're basically handing a power to it. If your parents tell you that your life has to be this way, or friends or co-workers or bosses, whoever in your life, religion, you name it, any construct, organization, groups, or whatever it is, if they're saying this is the game of life and you got to play it according to these rules, okay? You can choose freely, say, I'm going to play with those rules temporarily. But if you say, well, for me to participate or to be part, you're now saying, it doesn't matter what I know, what I feel, how I want to navigate, who I am, or anything of that nature, I'm going to buy into this list of things here because I want to be part of them. Or the fact that in one way or another, that's the way of life. However, like a lot of people say, we got to get our power back. Well, we're not taking anything back from anybody. What we're doing is shifting ourselves to say, I now choose to navigate from within, or from my true essence, rather navigating by what I hear, what I see, what is collectively being projected, or what I've been told and taught, or anything of that nature. Like again, you have to still go back into the list of resonance and say, okay, certain things resonate in my experience because it reflects who I am right now. And again, it's always now because that's always changing. But at any point in time, when you're going through this journey, you're basically saying, okay, I took on all these ideas, all these perceptions, all these belief systems, and so forth. And I had a colorful ride up to this point in time and learned amazing things and experienced amazing things. And I also learned how to judge it through the ego dance. Of course, there's likes and dislikes, positive, negative, whatever, all of those stories. but I've had a really great journey. But now you're at a point, the month's energy for April is self-empowerment. Self-empowerment meaning that you no longer are saying, I am no longer nilly-willy, as it said, hand my navigation controls to others. So the moment you agree, if somebody says to you, well, this is the way of life, and you go, yeah, okay, and you start taking steps, what you did is you negated what you know inside, you negated what you felt urged to do, and you say, here's the joystick to control my life. Here's the driver's seat of my journey at this point in time, and that's what you're doing. So that's when we're referring, giving our power away, is really giving away our own navigational rights, which is fine. We can do whatever we want to do for a temporary point, but we have to understand, if I'm going to go for that ride, I have to feel totally in resonance to do this for a long time, or I'm going to do it just temporarily. It's really yours to choose. So the discernment, and the reason we tie the two in, is that you're connecting with yourself, and then you also look at all of the stuff that you've adopted. We've all adopted ideas of life, way of negotiating through life and moving through life, the choices we make, the belief systems, who we are, what we think we are, and all of that stuff, the labels that we have applied to it and all of that stuff. Those were all parts of us pulling our bits and pieces of ourself and handing it out to whatever is going on. The same thing as the idea of having a sense of responsibility for various people. Because a lot of times you say, well, I'm responsible for my whoever, okay? We'll say son for the moment. Okay, I'm responsible for my son. So what you're doing is you're going in and saying, I give you, my son, the power to shape my life. Because if I'm going to live life around you, then I'm not going to create my life accordingly. I'm going to use it around yours. Or if you do it to a parent or anybody at this point in time, well, I give up my life driving capacities or navigating capacities, and I hand it over to you. So I'm not saying that you don't play with each other. You say, okay, well, you're in my life, but we're playing together in an empowered state. Go ahead.
It's frozen. Something's not working. There's something weird on the screen here. If you want, might have to
Okay, so just hold a second. Okay, we had a bit of an interruption there, so we're just going to have to try to pick the pieces where we were. So as I was saying, you can give your power away by choosing for someone else to actually now navigate your life. For example, saying, well, I'm responsible for my parents, I am responsible for my child, I am responsible for certain people, and that's okay as an experience, but how long does that stay in resonance for you to be able to do that? Because then you're basically saying, my life is on hold until I've achieved whatever that may be. So a lot of times, you take a child coming into your life and saying, okay, you're coming into my life, I'm going to live my life through you. And if you're okay with that for a period of time, great, have that experience. However, you're understanding that you're saying, I'm exercising my capacity of my so-called navigation and giving it to my son because that's the choice I'm making. However, or a parent or anybody else, however, then they are the ones that are in the driver's seat, and you're kind of accommodating accordingly. Now that may be okay for a little while, because if we have a belief system that in one way or another that we need to do that because that's expected of us, you have to understand that's a collective ideal belief system, and you can have that beautiful ride for a period of time, but eventually it starts to feel in dissonance. It starts to feel that in one way or another it's not really who you are, in the sense of saying no. So what am I saying? If somebody comes into your life, you choose to play together. However, you're still navigating your involvement. You're still choosing it from a higher perspective. Do I play with you at your terms, or is it my terms working with your terms in a sense where we support each other rather than one of us giving the other? And this happens with the reverse, because a lot of times what happens is the child feels, okay, I got to follow my parents' instructions because I got to make them happy or something of that nature, or or this is kind of what's expected of me and whatever. So what you're doing is, again, you're handing your power to someone else. And when I say power, you're designing your capacity to navigate through your life. You're saying, okay, you can hold the reins for a while. Right now, you got my joystick, you got my control structure, you're in the driver's seat for a period of time. So it's not really so much about everything else that's playing out on just on the world. It's even in our personal life. Now, here comes the next beautiful part. Many of us turn our so-called giving our power away to something that most of us, and some of us really deeply, is to this. I am disregarding, we've talked about it before, I'm going to disregard what the body is sharing, my human entity is sharing, what my soul is sharing, all these other aspects of myself, and I'm going to give it to you. You navigate. You go with what we call the 2D inverted, 3D inverted matrix game. We're going to take stories and so forth. We can feel the victim part or whatever it is. And you could do that for a period of time. And we all did it, and many of us are still in it. Maybe not 100%, but we're giving a lot of it. So what we're looking at is, the question is, how much navigational opportunities, or how much is in my driver's seat my ego, which is really just basically a software program that overrides every part. So here we got the mind, and the mind is a powerful computer. The soul is a multidimensional resource. Your human entity is a huge resource of every human experience. The body has so much to share. This is this nice, big, powerful operating system computer, and then you have the ego, which is just one particular facet of an operating system that's saying, okay, you take over. Okay? Great ride, great experience, awesome in every level and every way. So what happens, you come to the point is, you no longer feel like you're in resonance. It doesn't feel alignment with you. And many of us are feeling it much more powerful today, now, the last several years in some cases. Some are fairly new to this, and others have been through this journey a little longer. So it's saying, okay, am I going to be navigated by my ego? Am I going to be navigated by other people's opinions, belief systems, ideas, and collective groups, and so forth, including where we give our authority to governmental or other authorities or whatever it is? Because you have to understand that these authorities are there as a representation, as an opportunity for you to experience, if you choose to really go into self-empowerment, to go into your own driver's seat. So when it comes to the idea that in some way, somehow, I need to follow the rules for me to be able to navigate, that is again an idea that we've collected. Now, if we have it on the back end of our operating system and say, if I don't follow the rules, I'm going to be impeded, or I'm going to be somehow punished, or somehow I'm going to be restricted in any way, then guess what happens? Then we create that experience until you come to the realization that no, as much as the game is the game, it's up to me how much of the game I'm going to play. So if somebody says to you, oh, we're going to mass vaccinate everybody, and everybody's got to go there, or else you're not going to be able to travel or do anything at this point in time, you're going to say, oh, that's a very interesting experience. That's a very interesting collective idea, and so forth. But you can say, I'm not choosing that. But you're not going to say that I'm not choosing that because, oh, it's going to hurt me, or it's going to kill me, or the fact that I'm going to feel like a sheep or something following. You're going to say, no, it's not a thing I want to plug into my reality. And by being with that, you're kind of overlooked. You're not even noticed by it. People won't even ask you to check or anything of that nature. Now, of course, as many of us, more of us, come together, and we are, where we're saying, we're not accepting this idea of mass vaccination, or we're not going to accept what the status quo is because we're all going into the driver's seat, then we're creating another cluster of energy. For example, I've talked about this before, but maybe not as extensive, and we'll cover it some more. When we have many people believing certain things, we create a cluster consciousness. And what is a cluster consciousness? It's a group of different ideas, concepts, belief systems with rules and steps and procedures that how to navigate through life. So within this, we can tap into it. So if we have any idea at any point saying, I need to believe in certain parts of this, we are now tapping into that resource. And this resource says everybody has to be vaccinated for you to travel, or that the fact that if you don't vaccinate that you can get punished or whatever it is. That's all there in the collective. And many people reinforce it because certain key instrumental people and authoritative, so-called illusionary authoritative, may have kept plugging in. So on top of that, then we create fear. So fear is locked in. So this is a collective, what we can call a collective consciousness, very specialized, yeah, that's A. Yeah, that right. Very specialized cluster, meaning fear. So the fact is, right now, what's ever going on, there's a lot of fear. So every time we tap into any part of that fear, this whole cluster is there. So we're tapping into this resource. It's like you walking into a library, and that library has every book, every resource, every movie, everything there is around fear. And what fear represents. Meaning you got to be afraid of this, whatever it is. Or you can walk into a different library where it basically says everything about freedom, everything about your own creation, everything that you are really the navigator, driver of your life. So it depends on it. So right now, as many more people are coming to that realization, going into self-empowerment, and self-empowerment doesn't mean I'm going to go fight the system. It means, no, you are in this cluster. I am no longer choosing that. So if there's 5 billion people that support this, okay, I'm stepping out of the 5 billion, and now I'm going into this group, which this group is self-empowered, and this group does not put any power into the fact that anything has power over me, that we do not need to be vaccinated, that we do not need to play this role or that role or anything of that nature. So that's what's happening now. More and more of us are going in and saying, listen, I have the freedom to create this. So is it I'm going to fight for this, or I'm going to try to impose that? No, you leave this alone and say, I am stepping out of this and I'm creating this. Now, more that come in here, this becomes very empowering because this cluster of consciousness is much more supportive to your soul, human entity, and body versus just the ego mind. Because your ego mind is liking this one, everything else is wanting this one. It's a preference. It's not like one's better than the other. This is more in resonance because of where you're becoming. So now, in this part, we're not fighting, because the moment we're fighting, we're stepping back into here. We're not fighting, but we're choosing a new choice. And this choice is that we're going to play without vaccines, without borders, without limits, without the fear factor. We're not going to play with any of this stuff here, that we actually have the choice to design our world, whatever it is. And so what we do is we start shaping our life accordingly, and more will jump in. And that's what's been happening. Now, that doesn't stop there, because this, the power of this, is only driven by the ego. Because once upon a time, until several months ago, we had what we call the inverted matrix that was fueling everything. View matrix that was fueling everything to go into that compartment, saying, okay, this is the way of life. The inverted matrix kept pushing that, and the ego was very reinforced into that. Now, this is not supported any longer. This has been cut off. This is gone. So, in fact, all of this that's happening here is not being supported. This higher consciousness, awareness is being supported. So this is why a lot of this disclosure stuff is coming up. It's basically showing, hey, look at all that's going on. We bought into all of that. We played with it. Now look at there. There's all this stuff coming up that we were not aware of. Now, that does not mean that you're going to discover there's certain role players that played certain roles, and all of a sudden now we got to punish those role players or fight with the role players. It's not about that. It's basically just saying, okay, role players, you can play whatever you want, but we're moving into this, and you're taken out of the equation. And when I say taken out of the equation, we're not supporting you. It's like this. You can have a big group of people that say, okay, you want to join our group, you got to play according to our rules. Okay? So you may decide to go and do that for a short while. But at some point, the rules do not match you. It's not coherent, and it's not really matching who you're becoming. You're changing that. So you say, I'm stepping out of the game. I'm stepping over here, and I'm creating a new team. This new team is coming, other people that feel more in resonance with that. So you allow that to be there, but you're no longer putting any power to it. Guess what happens is you're creating this, more resonance of more of the players in there start to shift over to want to play in your team because there's much more freedom. Like, for example, a lot of times people get involved in so-called school gangs or whatever it is. Not even gangs, I don't know what they call it. But anyways, groups that, say, well, I want to be the in-group. I want to be that, in that, organization or whatever it is, because we have the idea, the ego says, well, if you're in that organization, you're loved, you're accepted. Maybe even people are afraid of you or something. But what's going on is that you're now playing a role based on the rules this collective has done. Because for you to be able to play this, you got to really follow the rules. That means you got to have fear. You got to feel that you're disempowered, that the government, the organizations, the experts, and so forth know better than you, have more power than you, can make your life good, bad, right, wrong, whatever it is, because whatever they say goes. Because there's a lot of evidence in the world because we play with it. But that doesn't mean you're stuck there. You could have played the stuck state, but you're now choosing into that. Look at how many people are choosing at this point in time no longer to play with the systems in the same way. All the alternative stuff started coming out. All of the choices that people are making where we're not going to induce or take in those types of foods or rules or anything of that nature. Now, some rebellion, yes, of course, is going on, and some people are voicing that we're not accepting this in our community or whatever else, and that you can do, but you're not going to go in with anger. You're going to go, listen, this is not acceptable in our community. We're coming together, and we're telling you this is no longer going down this path. And that's what you're doing. You're doing that because collectively you're saying, no more this. We're going to go play with this higher advanced version of the game of life. Okay? So we're stepping into that. This has discernment. This has power within yourself. That is your navigation abilities. Because you've always had it. You never lose anything. You just create an illusionary that you're disempowered. So the idea of, you have to understand. The other thing I wanted to throw in, and I know I will cover it more in details in another episode, but this group of all of this that's going there is every rule, every step, every agreement, idea, and concepts that is made up. Even the leaders who say, well, okay, listen, there's authoritative people there. It's made up. Authority to a degree, because all of a sudden they said so, or the fact that a bunch of people said that they're supposed to be the authoritative, or that they actually can dictate your life. Yes, while playing this game, it may look that way and it may have played out that way. But we're now saying, no, the authority is within me. I am the authority for my journey, my life. And more people doing that, then we create a platform that supports our own authoritative measures, because we're each authoritative of our own experience. Some people call it sovereignty, saying, well, I'm sovereign being. What does that mean? That I'm a free being? You've always been a free being. And you never, even when you're playing in this game, being in that confine, that you were never free. You're always free. Because the shackles of what that piece of paper would say, or any other idea that, oh, okay, you're owned by the banks, or you're owned by this, you're owned by that, is all fictional. It's all fictional. It's not real. So in fact, I'm going to follow the rules because somebody's saying, yes, you can turn around and say, well, I can't get a loan, or I can't do this without it. Yes, but you can find a different way to play it. Now, of course, more openings are coming about, and a lot of the old structures are being challenged and shifting accordingly. So realistically, the illusion that we have around our lives that we're not free is just that, an illusion. That we don't have power, we don't have choice. Because I can tell you right now that even the smallest child may enter into a family dynamics and be participating in the family dynamics in a disempowered state, or what looks like a disempowered state is just an illusion, because the child has power in the choice, even though it may not be able to care for itself in that physical form at that point. Because if the child says, I'm done with this trip, I'm done with these parents, I'm done with this journey, it can instigate from a superconscious state a whole chain of reactions and steps and so forth. And then all of a sudden they're in a different dynamics. They're in a different family or a different situation or whatever it is. They're no longer there. And what changed? From a superconscious saying, we're done with that. That's all. That's all it takes. We're never ever disempowered. That is the ego's idea that we are. It's the idea that really keeps us alert in the fact that the idea of this being real. And that's kind of the game. So we have to realize that this is a game, and the game is free to move through it because we're changing, we're upgrading. So what's happening right now in the world? We're given this opportunity so blatantly in front of us. This whole restriction idea and so forth. It's really up to us. We can be invisible in the game if we choose to do so. But as long as we have fears, we're kind of flashing lights saying, hey, catch me here. Catch me if you can. Let's play, right? But in fact, you start to shape it because you start to envision that life, and you're already feeding it out into the field, and others are connecting with it and are feeding it into the field. So even the meditation we just did on Saturday, on the 4th of April, that it wasn't about, oh, we got to extinguish what's going on so that we can have our normal life back. It's about self-empowerment. It was about re-empowering yourself to be able to go back into the driver's seat, to be able to create or be part of this new reality. See, like I've said in a previous series, that we are in a new platform. But it's up to us to utilize that platform. It's up to us to be able to say, okay, am I playing here or there? And if I'm playing here, this is open. We're all co-creating. We're co-creating in all of it. But there's a set of rules here that we agree to co-create in those set of rules. But this has no rules, or has a much more open platform. The idea that in one way or another we cannot self-navigate without having all this, that's just an illusion. The whole mentality around that is just a creation, which is great to experience, but we're moving through it. Was there anything you wanted to share around that? Any questions that I did not share properly?
No, I think you actually covered everything. The questions that had come in, you answered pretty well.
Okay. Unfortunately, we're not running live for this part, so we can't take any further of your questions. But if you do send it in when you're watching it, then we'll reply to it at some point in time, as we'll plug it into another series or something of that nature. But anyways, so when we're stepping into the whole part of discernment, this is really very instrumental right now. Using our own discernment on where we put our attention, what direction we look in life, how we unfold the different things that are coming into our journey at this point. So what we want to look at is, I'm going to make my own choices, and it has to be guiding within myself. Like I said at the start, there's a lot of information, and there's more coming through. And there's a lot of opportunity for us to get locked up more in that, but we also have much more opportunity in the fact of freeing ourselves from that. And this is what the series is about, is to kind of open up your access points within yourself, because you basically, what it's doing, it's just triggering what you already know. This is nothing new in the sense of a new discovery. From an ego perspective, from a mind perspective of what it's been exposed to, it may be new. For some of you, it may not. But at the same time, that inside of you, that soul, that higher aspect of yourself, the human entity, body, all of those things, those consciousness are resonating in a huge way now compared to before, because it all has chosen to support you on this new journey rather than the old journey. So right now, with all the changes and everything that's going on, is really, really stimulating to use our discernment, because if we don't, then we go for the ride. It's like we take the surfboard, we're going to ride the waves, or let the waves knock the shit out of us, or whatever you want to call it. And then the fact is, do I use my own navigation system, or do I let somebody else take it out? I mean, you have the free option to do so. But right now, we're saying, I'm going to go in the driver's seat, and I'm also going to decide which direction I'm going to go in any part of it, because it has to resonate with me. It has to resonate, it has to align with the direction of going, because we all have a very specific direction in our life, which we are co-creating because we're all supporting each other. We're really going through this advanced growth, expansion, and really shifting our reality from a inverted 3D, inverted matrix, 2D, to an organic 3D and then an organic 5D state. And what does the D stand for? It's dimensional consciousness. It's really a level of consciousness. And of course, the dimensional consciousness will be experienced differently on different planets and different playgrounds, or different playmates per se. But in here, fifth dimensional consciousness or third dimensional consciousness, which are organic, that means it's natural, the pure design, the part that was very powerful in for us to expand and grow, we're going into that instead of the opposite, because the 2D was complete asleep, the inverted 3D was backwards, where we digressed and devolved instead of evolved, and then the inverted matrix just kind of made everything that we are now that supported this part where you are in a disempowered state. So that's kind of what we're doing right now. We're shifting away from all of that, because in essence we're going into that organic aspect, and even the inverted matrix is no longer. So we're really, what we're operating from is an organic one. The thing is, how do we use it? Our discernment will allow us to connect with more, and stepping into our state of, I'm going to navigate from this point, and no one has power over me. No one has any say. So you may have to reclaim some of that. And when I say reclaim, you're not going in and say, hey, you took my power, let me have it back. No, you're going to say, I've given you the power to yourself, basically. I've given power to these ideas, concepts, belief systems, people, authoritatives, constructs coming in within, and now I'm going to start pulling each one back so that I'm getting into the driver's seat, and all of that does not have to be an influence or a director of my journey. So anyways, go out and play. If you missed the last workshop, which we had about a week and a couple of days ago, it's in the link of the body of the description, so you can access that. We do appreciate any support that we have financially to able to keep doing this for us, for you guys, and to assist. So there's a link for that. And if you'd like to check some of the other workshops, that's also at the bottom of that. Feel free to share it, to assist other people, because the more of us that become more in that empowered state, where we're not, going in a disempowered state, we are able to create this new reality in our life. So again, we'll see you until next time.